Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Cash That. This is your host, Joe Dellera. And feeling a little under the weather today. You can probably hear it in my voice. So I'm going to try to keep this one a little bit quicker. Going to hit you with the best bets, talk about a little bit of things in terms of betting process lately. And, we'll just riff a little bit on the NBA right now. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about first was we're about a quarter of the way through the season. Talked about this on Sunday on Buckets Future Jays episode with Matt and Jim for Buckets. But I did want to talk a little bit about the fact that we're quarter of the way through the season. And I do think that there are some teams that are kind of starting to tell us like who they are. And I think one of the ways that you can kind of do this and one of the ways you can kind of talk about this, and I talked about this from an effective field goal perspective on Sunday. I did want to talk about it from a little bit of a different perspective here. And what I wanted to talk about here was how teams are doing over the course of this season so far. So again, there's two different websites that I really like to use for this. Cleaning the Glass is one of them. The other one I really like is Dunks and Threes. And one of the things that you can see here that I like about Cleaning the Glass is they show obviously the point differential. They kind of sort out some of the blowout minutes, which I think is important. But they have this one category called win differential. And win differential is the difference between the number of games that a team has won and what would be expected based on their efficiency differential. So here, you can see that the best teams in the league, Oklahoma City, Houston, Denver, New York, Detroit, Miami. And then at the bottom, you're seeing Washington, Brooklyn, Sacramento, Indiana, New Orleans, what you would expect, right? Now, win differential, I think, is interesting because you have these teams that are basically overperforming based on what their point differential is. The Lakers are on here at the top. Detroit is also on here. San Antonio is there as well. And then you have Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City is fascinating because they're 20-1. And I'm recording this during the third quarter of the game against the Warriors. They're currently winning 75-64. So, that's another potential win for them, right? And it's basically just for Oklahoma City, when you're kind of at the extremes of some of these, you're always going to look like you shouldn't be winning this many games. It's almost impossible, even though they're plus 17. Next closest team is Houston at plus 12.2. The difference between Oklahoma City and Houston is almost the same difference as like Oklahoma City to Detroit or so. Detroit and Miami, and then their difference is about the midpoint. So it's definitely kind of interesting to look at. And I do think that some of these teams have reason to say like, okay, like this team is, overperforming for a particular reason. And here, I think that, you can kind of see as well, like over the past couple of weeks for LA, they're not performing particularly well against the spread. This number over here on the right, this minus 4.7 in terms of the spread. So you can get some opportunities where you can maybe buy low or sell high on some of these teams that are either overperforming or underperforming in the market. So I like to look at the bottom here. And one of the things that I think is particularly interesting is Minnesota. Minnesota is plus 6.1 in terms of point differential. They're 13-8, and Cleaning the Glass actually has that they should be 1.2 wins better. So instead of 13 wins, they should actually, according to Cleaning the Glass, they should have 14.2 wins on the season. That's what they would expect from these types of numbers. Now, one of my concerns with Minnesota is this. And when we sort some of these games by who is playing the best against the best teams in the league, and what this is opponent point differential rate. And we're looking at top 10 point differential rates. And you see Denver, New York, Detroit, Oklahoma City, all at the top in terms of this point differential. It's not necessarily record. But if you go down here, you have Minnesota. They're 1-5. They're basically just losing all of these games to these top teams. And their biggest thing here is the defense. They're allowing 122.2 points per 100 possessions on the defensive side of the ball, minus 6.5 in terms of overall point differential, which when you're playing the top teams in the league, most teams are going to be bad. And there's only right now 6 teams that have a positive point differential against those top 10 teams in the league. That means, so realistically, everybody in the league does pretty bad against these top teams. And we're also able to see, though, from a schedule perspective, Like Sacramento has already played 12 games against the top 10 teams in the league. Realistically, way more than really everybody else. Everybody else at the most has really played like 10. But then, like, if you look at New York, they've only played 5. Denver's only played 7. Detroit has actually only played 2. And I think that's part of the reason too. When you look at Detroit, you say, well, like, are they as good as they are? Is there some room for regression there? But for like Minnesota, I am a little bit concerned about their overall profile in terms of how well they will perform moving forward. Um, Obviously, the most important thing at the end of the day is, are you winning these games or not? But I do think that looking at some of these numbers and being able to say, well, like these teams actually either overperform, they underperform. What is the situation here? Houston is actually severely underperforming against these top teams. 2-4, they're still one of the 5 or one of the 6 teams with a positive point differential. They're plus 2.3, but they're a minus 1.4 in terms of win differential. I think this has to do with losing one of the games to Oklahoma City to start the season off. And then I think they also lost a game to the Golden State Warriors, who aren't in the top 10 at this point, but they might have been a little bit earlier. So we'd have to go back, take a look, and see what the schedule is. But Houston is a team that is breaking the mold a little bit. Their offensive profile is dramatically different than you would traditionally see from some of the current top offenses in the league. They don't really shoot a ton of threes. They get into the paint, they attack, get a lot of offensive rebounds. I'm curious to see how they develop overall. But we are seeing this little bit of a trend here where Houston, negative win differential, Denver, negative win differential, New York, negative win differential at the top. And then, you do see some of these other teams like Oklahoma City, their metrics are basically saying that they've won more games than they were necessarily anticipated to. Detroit is also right up there. The Lakers and San Antonio also right there. So something to kind of keep an eye on so far throughout the season. And then it is something to kind of consider with some of these other top teams like Minnesota, where I'm showing you, how they perform against other top teams in the NBA. And you go, well, maybe they just beat up on the bad teams. And that is more or less what we are seeing with Minnesota. When we look at Minnesota, they're 10-1 against the bad teams in the league, plus 16.2 point differential. New York is number 1 in this. They just absolutely demolish the bad teams. 6-0, plus 21.3 point differential. Miami's right there. Houston's right there. Oklahoma City's right there as well. So you can get these numbers to be a little bit skewed when you're looking then at the overall standings and you're saying, well, like this team, they're underperforming their point differential. It could be in part because of what their schedule is. And when they do win, they're just dominating or they're winning really, really big in some of those softer matchups. So something to consider, but we are 25% of the way through the season. And when you see some of these other teams towards the bottom, like when you're looking at the Los Angeles Clippers are in 25th, New Orleans Pelicans 26, Sacramento Kings 28. They're in this range with the Brooklyn Nets, the Washington Wizards, these teams that we thought were going to be bad in the first place. And then obviously you have a team like Chicago, started off the season really hot, been not so hot since then. And, you can say, well, maybe this is just actually who they are. Whereas if you look at Milwaukee, Philadelphia, they're not particularly good. They're 17th and 18th in adjusted, or rather in just point differential. Milwaukee's been dealing with Giannis injuries, dealing with players in and out of the lineup. Same with Philadelphia. But when you look at those two teams, that is not something that's out of the realm here. Philadelphia has not been a healthy team. They're not expected to be a healthy team. So this is more or less what we have here for Philly. And same thing for Milwaukee. They just kind of go as Giannis goes. If he's in, they're going to be good. If he's not in, they're going to be pretty bad. So let's take a look at some of these plays on the slate here. I've been getting really frustrated, honestly, looking and waiting for some of these games to pop because there's just no player props up. Right now, we got some stuff up for the Spurs and the Magic. Not super interested in this game right now. It looks like we only have one-way props on these anyway. We only have the Spurs, so not super interested. I know we were dealing with some injury issues here as well. So definitely something I'm going to maybe come back to. Looking at the Nuggets versus the Pacers, one of the spots that I was targeting here is I wanted to see where Jonas Valanciunas' player prop was. And I can see that FanDuel doesn't have it, but I did see it on Bet365 at 7.5. I think I would play 7.5 against this Indiana Pacers team. Pretty weak on the interior. They're still running out Jay Huff, who's been playing really well lately, but I do think it's a good opportunity to play that second big. Denver's a little bit thinner right now without Aaron Gordon, Christian Brown. I like the 7.5 for Jonas Valanciunas here. Would not play the 8.5. I like the idea that he can just get 4 shots up, 4 buckets in. I don't like the 8.5 where it's not really taking a ton of threes. So then you got to get to the foul line. Or he's going to make 5. So at that point, I would just play 10 plus, probably a plus money. For the Blazers and the Cavs, there was nothing in this game that was originally popping to me. I think one of the things that was interesting was there was a text that went out the other day uh, before the last um, Cavs game. Basically, the Cavs were going to be missing a bunch of guys. Coach texted Donovan Mitchell and was like, "I need you to get up 40 today." Gets up 43 and just absolutely obliterates his line. So definitely something that I would consider. Here, the most important thing is that Portland's on a back-to-back. Denny Abdia had a great game again. Dude is honestly like kind of flying under the radar. I get that he's one of the top players for most improved player this season in terms of the odds, but I feel like he's really been flying under the radar. Curious to see if anybody sits, doesn't sit, for Portland in particular here. I do think that this might be a spot where you maybe fade a little bit of Tyson if Garland and Hunter, if everybody's playing in this game. I know we got nothing up in Hornets Knicks right now. Knicks are on a back-to-back. Mitchell Robinson isn't going to play. I do think it's a good spot to maybe look at some Cat rebounds, some Josh Hart rebounds. Definitely a good opportunity there. Looking at the Clippers and the Hawks, one of the plays that I was looking at here was I was looking at Chris Dunn under 8.5 points. You can get that at minus 122 here at FanDuel. Part of why I like this is that he's been pretty hot on the number lately. And if we actually break it down here, I'll pull it up. One of the things here with Chris Dunn, let's pull this up here so you guys can actually see what I'm looking at here. So one of the things with Chris Dunn here that I liked was, even though he's gone over this line recently, past couple games here, he played against Atlanta earlier in the season, 36 minutes, 11 points, 5 for 10. Kawhi didn't play. And I think that that's pretty notable. Kawhi's obviously been playing more recently in some of these games, but these games have also been a little bit faster paced. Miami's a fast paced team. Atlanta plays at a decent pace as well, but Miami plays at a blistering pace. Went under against Dallas. Memphis also plays very fast, but the defense is abysmal. Lakers tend to sag off of players like Chris Dunn in particular. And then the spot against the Cavs as well. Just really like elite efficiency here. 3 for 5, one, like just not a lot of volume, just happen to be making his shots. I think this spot against Atlanta is tougher. In particular, my thought with Atlanta is that without Trae Young, they got a lot of rangy wings, like lengthy, athletic guys that will make it difficult for Chris Dunn to score the basketball. So I like the under 8.5 here. He's not necessarily taking a ton of threes every game. Like he's taking 2 here, 0 for 4 here, 2 for 5. Like he's getting some shots up in some of these spots, but other times, he can go out there and just do cardio. Like he's not necessarily somebody that they need to play a significant role in the offense. I think that it's a tougher matchup for him. I think it's a little bit of a buy, or rather of a sell high on him after this 12-point game and, going over this line in 4 of his last 5. So I think it's a little bit of a sell high. I like the under 8.5 points for Chris Dunn in this spot. I've got nothing in Kings Rockets right now, so I'm going to head over to Detroit versus Milwaukee. This line is kind of bouncing around between -3, -3.5, might go to -4. I would lean Detroit in this spot. One of my best bets during the course of the preseason was I had Detroit head-to-head wins over Milwaukee, so I'm not totally inclined to bet this spot here, considering I kind of have this like overall bet on the course of the season, and I think that I'm in a good spot for it anyway. One of the players, though, that I was considering targeting is Cade Cunningham. I think that Cade really can kind of excel in this matchup. This points prop has actually gone up a little bit. It opened at 26.5. I'm seeing now this 27.5 at even money. I think that the matchup for him is particularly strong. We're kind of dealing with this Bucks team who has struggled to defend lead guards. We've seen a number of different lead guards go off against them throughout the course of the season, whether it's Jalen Brunson or like a Tyrese Maxey. You're seeing Cade Cunningham himself. You're seeing a lot of success against this Milwaukee defense, who has really just kind of struggled to find their footing over the course of the entire season. One of the things that's also notable about this game here, as I guess maybe I don't. One of the things that's also notable about this game here is that we've got Gary Harris, Kevin Porter Jr., and Giannis Antetokounmpo all on the injury report. Giannis probably plays, but if Kevin Porter Jr. doesn't play, matters a little bit. Gary Harris Jr. doesn't play, matters a little bit as well. Jim Turvey brought up a great point. Ryan Rollins, when Kevin Porter Jr. has been on the floor, has not been nearly as good. So definitely something to kind of consider if maybe taking a under 15.5 look for Ryan Rollins. Just isn't getting the same usage, but I think you do need to know about the status of Kevin Porter Jr. before you bet anything Ryan Rollins related. Like if Kevin Porter Jr. is on the floor, Giannis is on the floor, probably going to want to maybe take a look at that Ryan Rollins Jr. under in this game against the Pistons and the Bucks. One other play that I was looking at here that isn't up yet for Knicks Hornets was Concanupple over on his points. Probably gonna be like 15.5, 16.5. He wasn't getting the same usage with Brandon Miller back. Brandon Miller is going to be missing this game against the New York Knicks. He's already been ruled out. So I do think that he's somebody against this Knicks team in particular who the defense has been solid, but for Knuppel, he's somebody that is always moving off of screens. He's constantly run. Knicks are on a back-to-back. Could potentially see that getting to be like a little bit lazy, or so to speak. And obviously you have Mikal Bridges, who's excellent at fighting through screens, over screens, whatever. But that's not necessarily the role that he's kind of taken on right now. He's playing more of that like free safety type of role. So that's something that I would consider in that game there. Miami versus Dallas. One of the things for Dallas has been that they have injected Ryan Nembhard in the starting lineup. Very frustrating because we haven't been able to bet on anything really related to Ryan Nembhard. But I do think that the thing that matters the most is it doesn't necessarily help their defense overall. I think that Nembhard's pretty good, but he's a little bit smaller. We are seeing this team run a little bit of a smaller lineup right now. And I think that also helps Davion Mitchell. And one of the reasons I say this is when I'm looking at Davion Mitchell, one of the things that I want to see is how does he go and how does he play with Tyler Herro making his return to the lineup. So what I did was I went on to Court IQ, which is a great tool from Roto Grinder. So shout out Jim again. But you can add players. So I think this is a better version of PvP stats, mainly because PvP stats, you can see what like the specific on and off courts are. I think this is just a little bit more intuitive. You have to pay for it. I don't, but but you know, you normally would have to pay for this. So I'm going to kind of show you a little bit about what it is and why I like it. And here, one of the things that I wanted to see was how did Davion Mitchell perform when he was playing alongside of both Norman Powell and Tyler Herro. And you can take a look and you can see like these are the standard stats here. So you can look here and you see this is pretty much the lineup that they're running. These are basically the only 5 guys that are playing in this lineup. It's their starting lineup. Played 3 games, 50 minutes together, 79 and a half possession or in a quarter possessions, give or take. Davion, you see him all the way up here at 9.97 in terms of his assists. And here you can see the differential from where he's been at. Tyler Herro sees a little bit of a bump. Davion Mitchell sees a bump of about 1 assist per, like 100 possessions or per 36 minutes rather. So I do think it's a good spot for Davion here when he's playing alongside of both Powell and Mitchell. The other thing to note is from a rebounds perspective, we see both Bam Adebayo and Andrew Wiggins see a pretty significant spike here. A lot of it has to do with the fact that Kel'el Ware is not on the floor in these particular lineups. They're running a little bit smaller. You're seeing Bam play the 5. You're seeing Andrew Wiggins play the 4. It's opening up a lot more opportunities there. So I like Davion Mitchell to go over his assist line. He actually played in this exact matchup a couple games ago against the Dallas Mavericks, only had 4 dimes on 10 potentials, but it was Tyler Herro's first game back. And I think that they've kind of gotten to get a little bit more of a into like a little bit more of a groove, and I think that matters. So, excuse me, over the last couple of games, he's really like cruised over these lines, double-digit assists, And I think that because he's getting a little bit more feel for this, these younger guards, when they get to play some of these matchups where the games are so close together, I think that it's an opportunity where they can say, I remember playing against this defense. I just saw this. I looked at the film. It's all fresh in my mind. I wanted to do this differently. And I think it presents a great opportunity for Davion Mitchell to go against this Dallas Mavericks squad who's playing a little bit smaller, a little bit faster, and potentially get a couple extra possessions. So it's at over 6.5 assists at Bet365. Absolutely grabbing that. Fiddle was on Andrew Wiggins double double. Talked about it on buckets. I actually would like his rebounds here as well. I think that you're going to get a good price. You're going to get a good price on that. I would imagine it's probably going to be around 5.5, but let's take a quick look so I can give you the right number. So yeah, you're getting for Andrew Wiggins, you're getting 5.5 at plus 125, and you're getting for Bam Adebayo 10.5 at minus 115. I think I would prefer for Wiggins. Might rather grab like a flat 5. So see where it opens up everywhere. And because on 365, it's minus 160. I don't see it up anywhere else just yet, but it's definitely something that I would look for. I think it was a good cap that he had on that prop. So those are the best bets that we're looking at for the Wednesday slate. We try to go on a little bit longer, but as you can probably tell, I'm dying a little bit. So wanted to get the best bets out to you guys. I know that we skipped last week due to the holiday, and we'll be back next week. I'm going to talk a little bit more NBA Cup, and as we're kind of moving through the knockout round. So absolute blast, love it, and let's continue to cash that.